Welcome to Sometimes Love Isn't Enough, the Parenting Through Challenges podcast. I am your host, Angie Grant, generational healing specialist, and today I want to talk about technology. So, I don't know if there is much of a way to escape technology in our life. It is literally everywhere. It's you're listening to this podcast on some form of technology. It is given to our kids in the school systems. Oftentimes, as parents, our toddlers know how to navigate through our phones quicker and more easily than we do. I can't even begin to tell you how many parents have said that their toddler has locked them out of their phone, right? Kids have so much access to technology. And when our kids get screen time, it it can cause us a lot of frustration. We know, I think we've all experienced kids or ourselves who, when we don't have access to screens, it can cause behaviors, it can cause frustration, it can cause overwhelm. For some of our younger kids, it can lead to meltdowns, or even our older kids, right? Our adolescents and teens really struggle with this idea of not having access to screens or technology. And technology has its place. Screens have their place in our kids' lives. But when we look back 20 years ago or even 10 years ago and how very different parenting is for us and for our kids, it's something that I wanted to talk about today. Because it isn't just that our kids can so easily become addicted to their screens. It's because it creates a dynamic in your relationship with your kids that often leads us to the space of feeling like we're having a power struggle or that we have to somehow come to a compromise with them, or we end up negotiating with our kids to try to find some way to appease them. Meanwhile, when we're giving in, we're feeling defeated. We're feeling like perhaps we're a failure as a parent because we know they shouldn't have screen time, and yet we can't seem to figure out how to not give in. And where in the heck is that balance? Well, I'm definitely not here to tell you how to parent or how much screen time your kids should have. The American Academy of Pediatrics has their recommendations about how much screen time is acceptable for kids based on their development and their age. But what I do want to talk about today is what's really happening underneath the surface. Because it isn't just about this technology thing is cooler than you. I had a parent today, a parent of a toddler, say that she said, "There's no way I will ever be as cool as," and then she named this TV character that many toddlers love right now. She said, I can't compete with her." And, of course, I didn't say this to the mom because I don't want to be hurtful, but the truth is, it is really hard to compete with what is happening on screens for our kids. I don't want to get into like all the technology and all the things that can be happening, right? There are things that can happen to the images that our kids see that can create more addictive properties for them. That's part of it, right? But also, when our kids are watching a screen, things happen at such a fast rate, in a rate that isn't realistic to real life. And that in and of itself can be stimulating, exciting. Things move from this thing to this thing to that thing quicker than our kids can process it, which is exciting for them. It's stimulating for them. It helps them. I don't want to say helps, but it puts our kids in this place where things almost feel magical or unreal. Except then when they're in real life, things feel dull and boring. When our kids are hooked to screens and technology, it can also be a bit of an escape for them. When our kids are on screens, for the most part, unless they're actively engaging in some type of social interaction, there aren't really demands on our kids. They get to escape from the demands of school, the demands to learn new skills or do things right, the demands from us as parents. Even when we're trying not to put pressure on our kids, we all do it. We all have expectations for our kids that we don't necessarily even know that we're doing. So when our kids are on screens, they get to just check out. They don't have to engage, they don't have to respond, they don't need to do anything. There are also some ways that screens or technology can help our kids really feel connected. They can feel unjudged. When our kids are engaging with, some type of AI, you, for any of you who have tried any type of AI tool, right? They tend to give such positive feedback in ways that maybe a friend at school wouldn't do the same, right? I type into my AI tool about, hey, I have this idea for an upcoming workshop, and I get this amazingly positive feedback about, oh, wow, that's a fabulous idea. This is so in line with your purpose, right? My friends don't say that to me. They might say something nice, but the technology steps it up a level in a way that can help our kids feel really connected. It can also help our kids feel regulated and calm. I've had so many parents say that their kids look the most regulated when they're on a screen. And then when they turn the movie off or the screen off, that's when their kids are dysregulated, which can put parents in a place and kids in this place where, well, why the heck would I take away this thing from them that is so regulating? That's a tricky decision to make as parents. Right? We don't want to do things to our kids that cause them distress, cause them to feel overwhelmed. But when I think about, right, again, technology and screens have their place with our kids. It's finding that balance that works for you, that doesn't take our kids from this, what seems to be fully regulated space to then, technology is done for the day and they're so dysregulated and they've lost control of themselves. Well, that's what we don't want for our kids, right? It's okay for our kids to feel, you know, a little bit of pressure or a little bit of dysregulation, but when it's this extreme up and down on a regular basis, that's where then coming up with strategy and really understanding what's happening underneath is so key to really supporting our kids in learning what those appropriate and safe boundaries are. Because here's what's really happening is all those behaviors that we see, right? When we take away technology, we tell our kids, they can't be online anymore, or we turn off their movie and then they're kicking and screaming and yelling and arguing and fighting. It's not our kids misbehaving. It's not our kids trying to manipulate the situation. I mean, maybe sometimes, but I would argue that more often than not, that reaction we see in our kids is a nervous system reaction. It's not a well thought out, like if mom turns off the TV, then I'm going to kick and scream on the floor until I get it back. It's not a decision that our kids make. Their nervous system suddenly feels dysregulated. Our nervous system is feeling maybe a little bit unsafe, which might sound silly, right? We turn off their favorite show on their tablet and they're kicking and screaming on the floor. It may not appear easily apparent that your kiddo is feeling unsafe, but I would argue that that's what's happening underneath the surface, that their nervous system is saying, Mayday, Mayday, we felt so calm a minute ago and everything was under control and everything was predictable and we knew what was happening. And now we feel unsupported, unprotected. We feel unsafe. And I know that that's a hard thing to hear when your kids are in your home, right? And you are keeping them safe. You know that logically. But I'm telling you, the nervous system doesn't think. The nervous system doesn't go through this logical thought process of reasoning that, well, of course I'm safe because mom is here and dot, 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 right? Our nervous system reacts. It reacts to what's happening in the moment. So when it's receiving all of this input and it's so controlled and it's so predictable, and then that's removed, that can really leave our kids feeling dysregulated and having a nervous system reaction. I also think that there are key elements our in our design that can help us support our kids with how to navigate the use of technology in a way that's more aligned with their energy. Right? You think about it, for those of our kids who, for example, have a first line profile, they really do want to dig in and, really go into the depths of understanding how things work. And so if they're using technology to do research and understand things, then that might be an area that you encourage more. But if our first line kids are perhaps using technology to veg out on a favorite TV show and check out, but that doesn't really match with their energetic needs, that's where it can become a problem, right? It might feel good to them in the moment to check out, but when they're not meeting their energetic needs, that might be part of what is leading to the dysregulation when the screen time ends. Or, for example, for our fourth line kiddos who really need deep connections with others, if their time spent on screens is being in, big social forums where lots of people there that they don't really know, although they might feel pressure like that's what they're supposed to do energetically, that isn't necessarily how they are designed to interact with others. Our fourth line kiddos really need a couple of really close friends that they can really connect with and understand, and who understand them and who they can confide in. And maybe online isn't the place for that because we can't control, what gets let loose online. Or for our third line kids who like to experiment and explore, helping them to find things where, maybe they're watching others experiment and explore, and then they take that back to real life and they get to experiment, science experiments and things like that. Our second line kiddos, they might need some of that decompression time, but not too much. Because the real beauty of a second line profile is a kiddo who needs time to go in and to kind of disconnect from the real world. But if that disconnection time is really just getting stuck in the scroll, we haven't really disconnected from the world, and you're not really connecting with yourself. And so finding ways to support our kiddos in ways that really match their energetic needs may be a way to support their use of technology in a way that isn't so problematic when they get off of technology. When they're really actually meeting their energetic needs, then perhaps there's a way to support them in creating boundaries that make sense for them and helping them tie what they're learning online with what's happening in their real life. Because that, when we think about the discussion of screens, the real problem is the dysregulation that happens with our kids, and they get so wrapped up in it, and then they don't know how to then, make that transition back to real life and engaging with others. And then when we're stuck in all of this, right? And we feel like as parents, we're stuck in these power struggles with our kids. We feel like we're in the space, like I said, of having to negotiate with them. It Knowing our kids' human design can also help us with that piece as well, right? Some of our kids are designed to need to feel more powerful. And so if we're telling them, 1 hour of screen time, they're more likely to buck at that rule versus engaging in a discussion with our kids so that they feel like they're in control of how much time. And I'm not saying they get to choose 24 hours a day, but what I'm saying is pull them into that discussion if you have a kiddo who needs to feel more empowered. Instead of having a hard and fast rule that you only get 1 hour of technology and that's it, and once the timer goes off, you're done. That can just be so much more dysregulating for our kiddos who need to feel in control of their own life, which isn't every kid, but it definitely is some. So, in supporting our kids, I think about there's so many tips and strategies that you can get from the behavioral intervention world about ways to help get kids off of technology, right? Using timers and reward systems and warnings. And, there's so many things from a behavioral standpoint that we can do to support our kids. But I really today wanted to highlight two key things when it comes to technology and our kids. The first being that when our kids are having these struggles of getting off technology, I really want you to consider reframing the way that you look at it and not look at it as your kid is, misbehaving. Because In most situations, I really firmly believe that your kid isn't choosing to have a meltdown because technology was turned off. There may be a bit of a learned behavior in there that, well, if I scream loud enough, I'll get it back. But I also think that part of that isn't so much a conscious decision and more of a nervous system response, right? Their nervous system feels dysregulated, right? You turn off their tablet and they have a meltdown because they feel unsafe. And then you give the tablet back because you want them to stop screaming and their nervous system feels regulated again. I don't think that that is a reflection of a child who made a conscious decision, a well thought out plan. If I lose my tablet, I'm going to have a meltdown, right? I really think that's more of a reflection of a kiddo who is desperately seeking to regulate their nervous system again, and they aren't able in that moment to access the things that you've taught them about how to do it in a more regulated way. So they scream, and it works for them. So that's one thing I wanted to highlight is that when we look at the way our kids are reacting to screens, to really consider looking at it through the lens of what's happening to their nervous system, because then that will give you key insights about how to support them. The support doesn't come from more rules or more restrictions or more you controlling things. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have boundaries around technology, but what I am saying is if you try to tackle a nervous system problem with a logical solution, you'll keep butting heads with your kiddo and keep feeling like you're being defeated by screen time. And I don't want that for you. And I don't want that for your relationship. And I imagine that you don't either. And then the other piece that I wanted to say is that there really are some key elements in our kids' design energetically that help, that can give us some insight about how to support them a little bit better in their interactions with technology. To find ways to support them energetically and also have boundaries around that. This is how we help our kids not go through this drastic up and down dysregulation cycle when it comes to technology, so that they can gain the beauty that can come from technology and also step away from it and really work on connecting in real life with real humans in their family, in their communities, at school. So, if you are still feeling stuck, like you know what to do and you can't seem to break the cycle for yourself, this is the work that I do. I offer you a free connection clarity call where we will go through a powerful exercise where I show you where where you're getting stuck. I reflect back to you what seems to be getting in your way, and then we talk about if something that I offer is right for you. So, that is it for this episode. Thanks for hanging in there with me, and I would love to hear your thoughts about this topic as well. Be well and chat soon.